Here in phase 5, position number 4, we're focusing on the backside or top arm angle as we come into the completion, follow through the swing. I want you to notice in this particular swing the elbow is elevated, and we use this as a barometer, to identify if we have gotten the maximum out of the top hand, and it's a good way to also determine whether or not we've gotten the torque from the hips and the body, because if I have an arm that is anything other than this, I have not probably maximized the complete torque of my body. In other words, a lot of times players will release that top hand, it'll lay down on their side, it'll be out in front, and this example here identifies that the top hand, which is really what takes over from the C position through contact through the finish, is generating the power, and it is a good, again, a barometer to determine whether or not we got maximum power, because the top hand helps guide the bat head. Now, give you an example. When you're in phase 1, really the bottom hand takes 75% of the effort and the top hand is 25%. In phase 2, going to the load or trigger, the bottom hand takes 75% and the top hand has 25% of the responsibility of the holding the bat and the pressure on the bat. Now, as we come in from the phase 2 into phase 3, well, guess what? Same thing. Bottom hand still has 75% of the effort, and the top hand has 25%. But it's at that point from phase 3 now, in the transition from 3 into phase 4, or wherever that point of contact is, and through. So the last 2 phases, the top hand now takes the 75% responsibility, and the bottom hand has 25%. And the issue here is that when you have a good, transition, and you have maximized that top hand through the final 2 phases, you will come to a position to where you see it as it is right here, with an elbow position obviously up. Now, let's talk about the angle of the elbow. In this case, if you have an angle of the elbow, as you do in this particular illustration, that typically means that you've had a pitch that was about midway up. So it was up in the zone, above probably the midpoint of the strike zone. And so if you've got a pitch that was a little bit down, you probably would not have that elbow as elevated. So keep that in mind as you're looking at your personal clip. So as we finish and bring that top hand through, as it does its thing in taking over and helping the bat head get to the pitch with maximum velocity, you're going to come to this resting point. And the resting point in this example again was a position probably identified to a higher location of the strike zone in which he made contact. And again, if there's a little bit de-elevation of the elbow, it's typically because he had to go down and get the pitch. Now, the other thing I want to mention to you as we wrap up what the lead arm is doing is I want you to look right down there at the bottom by his feet. Look at the shadow, and then look at the top hand in that shadow right between where his knees are. You'll notice too that he releases. It's permissible to release at this point once the top hand has accelerated through from phase 3 to 4, from 4 to 5, this is the completion of 5. Now at this point the top hand can release, and not before. And too many times, and you'll see in your own personal video clips of your player or other players, you'll see that this top hand or top arm never gets to this position completely, which means as a barometer you're not really getting maximum effort. Again, this arm position here is much like a gauge on a gas tank. If you've got a gas tank that's full, you'll see the barometer indicate that by resting on the F on the tank. Conversely, if there's no fuel in the tank, you're going to get an E. Well, in this case, if you have a tank and you've used all the maximum capacity available to you, then the barometer, in this case, to identify full, would be in this resting position where the top hand has since released, as you can see in the shadow. Again, it would show that you use full capacity. Again, conversely, if it was limited and you did not, it would be an empty. Well, then your hand being anywhere else but here would be an indication that you did not get maximum torque on the swing of the bat head through. Probably lost a little bit of the angle of the bat head, particularly if you let go just before or right in the contact zone. You'll lose a little bit of the bat head. Again, the top hand helps keep the bat head up, and if you're not controlling that and getting that top hand through with maximum effort, you're going to have a tendency not to hit with the power you want, and you will obviously lose some of the bat head angle, because if it's a weak top hand, which is what we get out of a lot of players who don't come to this resting position, then you're not going to hit consistently, and there's where some of your pop-ups, because you're going to lose a half an inch to an inch in the contact zone itself by not having a strong top hand through. And so there you see it. This is an example of a good, strong completion of the top hand through and a release on the backside of the swing and not before. So we hope we've explained a little bit about the value of the lead arm and the top hand release. Now let's go into position number 5.